The gym hummed with restless energy. Rows of folding chairs creaked beneath caps and gowns. Flashbulbs popped, parents waved. The air smelled of flowers and nerves. On the makeshift stage, the principal cleared his throat into the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, before we present the final diplomas." A ripple of noise, someone coughed, another yawned. "We have the honor of hearing this year's student speech. Please welcome." A pause, pages shuffled, the principal squinted at the name. Ethan Wilson Dash. For a moment, confusion flickered through the crowd. "Who?" a boy whispered. "Wait, does he even talk?" snickered another. "I didn't even know he was in our class." Dash. The sound of soft laughter spread, not cruel, but dismissive. A wave of quiet amusement. In the very back row, where the shadows gathered, a figure shifted. Ethan Wilson. 17. Shy. Invisible. A tall, slender boy in an oversized black gown. Hands trembling slightly. He unfolded a single sheet of paper. Stood. Heads turned. Phones tilted upward, some to mock, some simply curious. Ethan's breath caught. "Just walk, Dash." He willed his feet forward, one slow step at a time. Down the aisle lined with eyes that had never truly seen him. Mrs. Bennett, the literature teacher, blinked in surprise. Mr. Daniels, the gym coach, leaned to whisper, "Is that the Wilson kid?" No one had an answer. The gym seemed to stretch endlessly. Each step echoed. At the foot of the stage, Ethan paused. A final breath. Up the wooden stairs, heartbeat racing louder than the scattered claps that greeted him. He reached the podium, placed the paper down. Hands gripped the edges, white-knuckled. I scanned the sea of faces. Laughing faces. Bored faces. Faces that had never looked his way in 4 long years. Inside his mind, "I am not here to impress them. I am here to speak." Dash. The microphone hissed. The room settled. Ethan leaned forward, cleared his throat once, and spoke. "Good afternoon. My name is Ethan Wilson Dash." A few more muffled laughs, fading quickly. "Most of you don't know me, and that's okay, Dash." Now, the room began to still. One breath. One sentence. One voice, clear, fragile, determined. The speech had begun. Applause thundered through the gym. Sarah Bennett, class president, honor roll, queen of every hallway, beamed as she crossed the stage. Flashbulbs burst, parents rose to their feet. "We love you, Sarah," someone called. She waved, flawless smile gleaming beneath her cap. Next came Jason Clark, star quarterback, scholarship winner. A cocky grin, arms wide as the cheers rained down. "There's our man," a voice boomed from the bleachers. Jason high-fived a row of teachers as he exited the stage. The gym vibrated with energy. But in the corner, unnoticed, sat Ethan Wilson. Back straight, hands folded in his lap. He watched, silent. "Whyam?" a girl whispered behind her hand. Should have been Jason Dash. A ripple of agreement passed through the row. What's he gonna say? Does he even have friends? Their words didn't pierce like they once would have. Not anymore. Inside, Ethan's heart pounded like a drum. Palms slick with sweat. Mouth dry as dust. But his gaze remained steady, fixed on the stage. "You chose this, Dash." You can do this, Dash. The principal returned to the podium. And now, our student speaker, Ethan Wilson Dash. The gym fell to a hush, thin, uneasy. Ethan rose. Chair legs scraped the floor with a sharp screech. Dozens of eyes turned, half curious, half dismissive. A phone lifted. Recording already. This is gonna be awkward, Jason muttered, smirking. Ethan heard it. Didn't flinch. One foot in front of the other, he moved toward the stage. Each step slow, deliberate. You don't owe them perfection, he told himself. You owe them your truth, Dash. He climbed the steps, paper trembling slightly in his fingers. At the podium now, a sea of faces stared back. Bright smiles, smirks, raised brows. Say it, Dash. He looked down at his page, then raised his head. Most of you wished I wasn't standing here today, Dash. A murmur rippled across the room. And I understand why, Dash. Ethan's voice, quiet, but unwavering, cut through the silence. I wasn't the loudest. I wasn't the strongest. I didn't wear the right clothes or say the right things, Dash. A few phones stopped recording, heads tilted. But today, I have something to say, and you will hear it, Dash. No smirks now, no whispers. The gym held its breath. The quiet boy had begun. As Ethan stood before the sea of faces, his voice steady. The edges of the gym began to blur. Images flickered behind his eyes. Years folded upon themselves. A silent reel of moments no one else remembered. Cut to a dim cafeteria corner. A lone tray. Ethan, 13, eating with hunched shoulders. Plastic fork scraping across the plate. Laughter erupted at a nearby table. Not once did a glance come his way. No invitation, no acknowledgement. Cut to a crumpled piece of homework. Torn edges. Shoved deep into a trash can. Ethan's small hands reached in. Fingers trembling, retrieving what mattered to him. He smoothed the paper against the tabletop. Blinking hard. Cut to the school library. Afternoon light filtering through dusty windows. Ethan sat beneath the clock, screwdriver in hand. Bent glasses resting on his knee. With delicate care, he repaired the frame. No one saw. No one asked. Cut to the hallway. A boy in a wheelchair, stuck at a locker. Others streamed past, indifferent and patient. Ethan approached quietly, unlocked the latch, gathered the books. No words exchanged, just a grateful smile. And Ethan fading once more into the crowd. Cut to a modest science fair. Rows of trifold boards and blinking lights. Ethan stood beside his project, intricate, ingenious. A judge nodded, impressed. First place, Dash. Later that day, no announcement. No school-wide post. No recognition. But Ethan had smiled to himself. I know what I built, Dash. Voice over Ethan's inner thoughts. I've lived in silence, but I've seen everything, Dash. The kindness others never saw, Dash. The cruelty they chose not to stop, Dash. The moments no one thought would matter, Dash. Cut back to present. Ethan at the podium. Eyes open. Voice ready. And today, I will no longer be invisible, Dash. The gym buzzed softly, murmurs, the faint hum of cooling fans. Rows of students shifted in their seats. Phones hovered mid-air, ready to capture another awkward clip. Another moment to laugh at later. Ethan stood at the podium, a single folded sheet of paper trembling slightly in his hands. He drew a slow breath. I know most of you don't know me, Dash. Maybe never noticed me, Dash. His voice, thin, uncertain, barely carried past the first few rows. A wave of smirks rippled through the crowd. Jason leaned towards Sarah with a crooked grin. Told you, this'll be great, Dash. A flicker of heat sparked behind Ethan's ribs. Not anger, resolve. He straightened, cleared his throat. But in silence, you learn, Dash. You see the moments others miss, Dash. A pause. Breath steadying. You see the tears in the restroom when no one else is looking, Dash. The lunch trays cleared by the kids too nervous to sit with anyone, Dash. The kindness of teachers who leave encouraging notes, even when they're never thanked, Dash. Phones wavered. A few screens dipped lower. A teacher in the front row blinked. Mr. Collins' gym coach leaned forward, arms crossed. Ethan's voice grew warmer, deeper. You also see what's not kind, Dash. The names whispered in the halls, Dash. The messages sent and deleted, Dash. The hands that should have helped, but didn't, Dash. A hush spread through the crowd. The gym, moments ago alive with shifting bodies and restless energy, stilled. I've sat in those back rows for 4 years, Dash. I've eaten alone, Dash. I've heard the laughs, Dash. But I've also seen the courage it takes to face each day anyway, Dash. His eyes swept across the room. Met faces, some sheepish, some wide-eyed, some softened. So today, before we leave this place and write new stories, remember this: the loudest voice isn't always the strongest, Dash. The brightest light doesn't always come from the front of the room, Dash. Sometimes it comes from where no one thought to look, Dash. Silence. No shuffling. No giggles. Even the principal, seated to the side, had stilled, hands clasped, breath caught. For the first time, the auditorium leaned in. And Ethan's voice, once a whisper, now held the room like a song. The paper in Ethan's hands now hung forgotten. His voice, no longer uncertain, resonated through the stillness. Every single person matters, Dash. Even those you never noticed, Dash. He drew a breath, felt the weight of every gaze in the room. Because one day, his throat tightened. He swallowed. They might be the ones to lift you up, Dash. A tremor ran through his voice. But he stood tall, steady, silent. The words hung in the air like a held note, vibrating in the hollow stillness. No movement. No coughs. No restless feet on gym floors. Ethan's heart thudded. He could hear it, could feel it echoing in the hush. For a moment, it felt like time had stopped. In the front row, Sarah's smile had faded. Jason sat frozen, phone forgotten in his lap. A teacher blinked, eyes shimmering. A custodian at the side doorway stood still, arms crossed, head bowed slightly. Ethan looked out across the sea of faces. For the first time in 4 years, they saw him. Not as a shadow, not as background noise, as a voice, a person. His chest rose once more. Then he stepped back from the microphone, lowered his gaze, trembled, but did not break. Breathless silence. And then, clap. A single, sharp sound. Second row, middle. Mrs. Sandoval, literature teacher, hands together. Eyes shining. Clap, clap. Another. The principal stood. Joined. A wave. A rising tide. Clap, clap, clap. Row by row, the gym erupted. Students on their feet. Teachers, staff. Phones now pointed not to mock, but to capture. A standing ovation. Ethan stood motionless. Eyes wide. Not smiling, not yet too overwhelmed for that. But in his chest, something bloomed. Quiet pride. He had spoken. He had been heard. And for the first time in his life, the silence belonged to him. The ceremony ended. The lights dimmed. Caps tossed. And the crowd, once indifferent, now flowed toward one place. Toward Ethan. He stood near the stage. Paper still folded in his hand. Shoulders tense, unsure what came next. Then, hey, Ethan, right? A girl he'd only seen in passing. Cheeks flushed. I'm sorry I never spoke to you, Dash. She reached out hesitantly. He shook her hand. That was incredible, Dash. Before he could reply, me too, Dash. A boy from the soccer team. Eyes cast down. I judged you. Never really thought about what you might be going through, Dash. Ethan's breath caught. Words failed him. So he smiled small, but real. The stream of students grew. One by one. You changed how I see people, Dash. You gave me hope, Dash. Thank you, Dash. Each voice chipped away at years of silence. Then, a familiar figure. Mrs. Sandoval. She approached softly, placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. Her voice low, meant only for him. That was the most honest speech I've ever heard, Dash. Ethan blinked back sudden tears. Thank you, ma'am Dash. She smiled. No, Ethan, thank you for reminding all of us that some voices matter most when they've been quiet the longest, Dash. She stepped back. And for the first time, Ethan stood not as a shadow, not as the boy in the back row, but as someone seen, noticed, respected, heard. The gym began to empty. Sunlight streamed through high windows. Ethan lingered a moment longer, looked at the stage. Fingers brushed the folded speech in his hand. And with a quiet breath, he smiled. For today was the day he had been seen. The auditorium sat empty now. The applause had long since faded into memory, leaving behind only silence, a soft, sacred hush that clung to the velvet seats and polished stage like the last note of a beautiful song. Dust floated in golden beams from the high windows. The sunlight slanted across the floor, stretching toward the podium where it had all changed. A single chair remained on stage, Ethan's chair, back row, far left, forgotten by the custodians, or maybe left intentionally. The camera drifted slowly through the quiet, catching echoes of what had happened hours earlier. A boy, unnoticed, overlooked, had stood before a room that never truly saw him, and he made them look, made them feel, made them listen. Now, only the stage lights hummed softly overhead. One flickered, as if remembering. Then a voice. Ethan's voice, not live, not loud, but lingering, honest, measured. In a world that celebrates loud voices. A soft breath between words. the kind that made you lean in. Never forget the strength of the quiet one's dash. A flash of the podium, empty but not forgotten. Because sometimes, the people no one notices are the ones who leave the deepest echoes dash. A final pause. The camera pulled back farther. The auditorium became smaller, but the words, they hung in the air. And then, slowly, fade to black. The world had spoken over Ethan for years, but now his silence was the sound they remembered most.